Welcome to a presentation on the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project. My name is Richard Klein. This is a map showing the proposed routes or the corridors that are being considered for the 70-mile transmission line. Each one of these yellow lines is a possible route for the 70-mile project that will begin in southwest Frederick County and run through Carroll County and in northeast Baltimore County. And here's what the 500 kilovolt transmission line may look like. On the left are photos of an existing 500 kilovolt transmission line in Frederick and Carroll County, and on the right is a tower for the existing line in Baltimore County. With regard to potential transmission line impacts, let's start with those that would affect the folks that would live closest to the transmission line. Here you see an excerpt from the PSEG transmission line route map. The orange area is the 550-foot wide corridor in which the 150-foot wide transmission line right-of-way would be cleared. As you can see, the 550-foot wide area not only laps into people's yards, but it also includes several of their homes. And unfortunately, this is not the only neighborhood along the 70-mile route that would be similarly impacted. With regard to impacts, it'll be the construction phase, noise, and dust that first makes life unbearable for nearby residents. There's also a possibility that their health could be affected by the electromagnetic fields emanating from a transmission line. The studies on the left indicate that there is a cause for concern. However, as noted on the right, the World Health Organization, their view is still that EMF health effects are undetermined. However, they also caution that approaches are recommended for children to protect them from the potential health effects of EMF. So for the time being, if I live near a transmission line, I'd be inclined to believe studies like this one from Italy that found that there are adverse effects out to at least 328 feet, but they couldn't find any adverse effects out as far as 1,000 feet. So to err on the side of safety, I would prefer that a transmission line be located at least 1,000 feet from my home. And here you see another excerpt of the PSEG transmission line map, showing these yellow lines that are 1,000 feet from the orange corridor line. So any homes within this 1,000-foot area might potentially be at risk for adverse health effects. There's also research indicating that power lines have a negative effect on property value. And this study from South Carolina indicated that if you could see a transmission line tower and you were within 1,000 feet of the transmission line, there could be a 18 to 45% decline in property value. Again, we see the same map on the right showing areas that are within 1,000 feet of the PSEG transmission line corridor. So now for impacts that we're all going to suffer if a poorly planned PSEG project is approved. So the first impact is going to be, we're going to get more of electricity from dirty sources, specifically coal-fired power plants located in West Virginia. And as you can see from this map from the Piedmont Environmental Council, the proposed transmission lines, which are these here, and then this is the Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, they're going to convey power from these West Virginia coal-fired plants to data centers in Virginia and the Frederick area. There are also going to be adverse effects to our sensitive ecological resources. For example, here you see that the northern PSEG corridor in red, and then the southern corridor in orange here in Baltimore County. These hatched areas that you see here, they may support threatened or endangered species. And as you can see, these transmission lines are proposed to pass right through those sensitive areas. So a lot of potential ecological impacts. Here's a specific example of an environmental impact. Here you see the Muddy Creek watershed in Carroll County. Muddy Creek is pretty unusual in that it supports brook trout, and brook trout are among the most highly sensitive fish in Maryland to changes in watershed land use. And one watershed land use that's particularly important to trout are forest. In fact, this graph in the lower right from the Maryland Department of Natural Resources shows that in order for trout to survive, there needs to be at least about 60% of the watershed covered in forest. Well, unfortunately, this report on the left from the U.S. Geological Survey shows that right now the Muddy Creek watershed only has a 29% forest cover, yet it still supports brook trout. However, that population is probably in jeopardy. If any more forest is cleared from the watershed, the brook trout may no longer exist. And here you see an excerpt from the PSG route map showing that the transmission line would be proposed to actually cross Muddy Creek at this point. And the 150-foot swath would clear a lot more forest from the watershed. So if the PSEG transmission line does pass through this sensitive area, the brook trout it supports may no longer exist. So in addition, the transmission line also threatens a number of properties, farms, that have been preserved at great farm owner expense and expense to those taxpayers. Here you see a map from southwestern Frederick County showing that the PSEG northern route, this red line, will pass through a number of these colored areas. And each colored area is a farm that's been preserved, again, at great expense to the farm owner and to us taxpayers, and that the southern orange route would also pass through preserved lands. So this is another impact that we're all going to suffer. In addition to that insult to injury, we're all going to pay for the $424 million PSEG project through higher electricity bills. So here's a strategy for defeating a poorly planned transmission line project. And I'm going to begin with an explanation of how I know that these strategies are likely to succeed in protecting everyone from a poorly planned transmission line project. First of all, this map shows all the places in the U.S. where my organization, Community and Environmental Defense Services, CEDS, has helped people protect their neighborhoods or the environment from poorly planned land use projects. And this map also shows 5 transmission line projects that we've been engaged in. Only one of them is ongoing, the Plymouth project in Wisconsin. Last year, we defeated a transmission line project in Colorado. Actually, the applicant withdrew. And 15 years ago, we helped defeat the Mid-Atlantic Power Pathway that would have ran through Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and New Jersey. We helped the Little family in Bedford, Pennsylvania to bump a proposed transmission line around their farm. And we also helped to win a co-location, that is to run the proposed TransSource transmission line along an existing transmission line corridor that greatly reduced impacts to our clients. So we're a nationwide network of attorneys, PhDs, professional engineers, and other experts who, again, we specialize in helping citizens concerned about poorly planned growth. With regard to transmission lines, our network includes 8 experts who have testified as expert witnesses in transmission line cases. And one of our specialties is helping people to reach out to their neighbors, convince them to join with them with a united voice, providing elected officials with the political support that they need in order to deny approval for poorly planned projects or to add conditions that resolve impacts. So here are the basic strategy options for dealing with the PSEG transmission line. First, we could seek to prevent granting approvals that the project needs. Second, we could tighten regulations on data centers and other power-hungry uses that appear to be the motivation for the PSEG transmission line project. We could force the transmission line onto existing utility corridors and thereby greatly reduce impacts. We can also assist landowners in negotiating more favorable routing or easement terms, and there are no doubt a number of other options that would become obvious through additional detailed research. The project is going to need approval from various state agencies, the lead which is the Maryland Public Service Commission. Other state agencies will be commenting on the project. And fortunately, in the past, agencies like the Department of Natural Resources, they succeeded in blocking transmission line proposals due to excessive environmental impact. The counties of Baltimore, Carroll, and Frederick are also going to be required to grant permits. However, the Public Service Commission may be able to preempt county authority. That is, if a county denies approval, PSC may require that the approval be granted anyway. However, it looks like PSC authority to preempt only applies to the transmission line itself, and adjunct facilities like a new substation. If a county denies approval for the substation, PSC may not be able to prevent that. Nevertheless, participating in the PSC process is going to be very important. Unfortunately, it requires specialized attorneys and experts who are very expensive. So, as far as the Maryland Public Service Commission goes, as of July 12, PSEG had not submitted a formal application, but they have held these 3 informational meetings shown on the dates you see here. However, in the future, PSC will be holding local hearings in Baltimore, Carroll, and Frederick counties, and there will be a main hearing in Baltimore City. So here's what we learned about winning transmission line cases and cases involving other major development projects. So the first and most important thing is to mobilize support among all of those living or owning property within 1,000 feet of each of those proposed routes. And once we get a large number of impact zone residents that are supporting the effort, we'll need to form a coalition to lobby the local government to take on the expense of mounting a legal challenge and to use their political influence in support of politically viable solutions that resolve the impacts. We need to build a case that state environmental and natural resources agencies should oppose the project. We need to search for that politically viable alternative that would resolve or at least reduce impacts. We need to look into secondary impacts, such as those resulting from data centers, impacts that could expand the impact zone and therefore the base of public support. We need to research local permits and other approvals that are not preempted by the Public Service Commission. And lastly, we need to realize that most public service commissions only require an applicant to demonstrate that there is a need for a transmission line. They tend not to be swayed by environmental or social impact issues, and their decisions are rarely reversed by appellate courts. So while the PSC process is crucial, we should never put all of our eggs into that one basket. So success, again, is going to be far more likely with a united network of landowners and residents, all of those living within at least 1,000 feet of each of these possible corridors. Network members have to resist the temptation to lobby for a route that doesn't impact them, but might push the line onto somebody else's backyard. Instead, we should list those local impacts as one of the many reasons to reject the entire project. So winning cases like this one, despite the popular myth that you do it with attorneys and expert witnesses, most cases, 70% of victory is simply showing that there are a large number of voters that support your position. But then you have to show that those supporters are supporting your position because of reasons that are grounded in science. And then you have to show that those science-grounded reasons show that required findings to approve the project cannot be met. If you have all 3 of those, then likelihood of victory becomes much, much higher. So here are possible strategy options for protecting specific farms, specific neighborhoods, and specific sensitive areas. And protection is a lot more likely if we can show that a farm, a neighborhood, or an environmental resource is uniquely sensitive to transmission line impacts. So here's the first example of a possible solution for protecting a specific property. Here you see an existing transmission line tower. This is for a 500 kilovolt transmission line, just like that's proposed. And here you see the transmission tower has one level of circuits on it. This tower, though, has three different levels of circuits. So is it possible that the PSEG circuits could be added to a second level on the existing transmission line tower? Or could this tower be replaced with one like this that's built to have three different circuits? I don't know because I'm not an expert, but there are 8 transmission line experts within our network, and they may be able to determine whether or not this is a viable option. Another option for sensitive resources that are located in valleys would be spanning the valley. Here you see 2 examples of transmission lines that have a cleared area up on hilltops here and here, but the valley has no transmission line towers in it. Forest hasn't been cleared, and the valley has been pretty much left intact, at least with regard to forest. So this is another option that may be available in some cases. So another option that folks always ask about is running the transmission circuits underground. Unfortunately, the usual response from the utilities is that placing transmission lines underground are 4 to 10 times more expensive than overhead. However, when you look at the actual research into the relative cost of underground versus overhead, you find that studies like these 3 show that when you consider the cumulative long-term cost and benefits of placing a transmission line underground, it's about the same as running it overhead. So an option that none of us want to consider, but should be in our back pocket, is the possibility of negotiating more favorable easement terms if it becomes obvious that the transmission line is going to pass through a property. So here are some suggestions for defeating the PSEG transmission line project. Again, we need to mobilize a network of all of those living and owning land within 1,000 feet of all the yellow colored routes that you see here. We need to get each landowner resident to sign a petition like the example you see here. Stop Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project, the organization that's currently leading the charge against the PSEG project, they're going to be creating a petition like this one. And it's really important that when you see that you're being asked to provide not only your name, but your address and your zip and your email address and phone number, please provide all 3. They're vitally important to success. With this, we can produce an aerial showing the location of all the petition signers that's going to really impress elected officials. Even more impressive to elected officials are going to be the answers that most of you will likely provide in this space for why it is that you're signing the petition. Any savvy elected official knows that if you ask people within 2 weeks of signing a petition what it was they signed, they won't remember. That also says to that elected official, come the next election, this person isn't going to remember which way I voted on the transmission line, so I can ignore the petition. However, when people provide a reason, a well-founded reason for why they're opposed to something like a transmission line, this says to that same savvy elected official, here's somebody who genuinely cares about the issue, enough so that they're probably going to follow my action on the issue, and they're going to remember come the next election whether or not I supported PSEG or whether I supported the folks that are impacted by the transmission line. So in other words, if I want to stay in elective office, I need to come down on the side of voters like this that care enough to remember how I act on the issue. In addition, the coalition would be engaged in a number of activities like this example here. Here you see a letter that was signed onto by 22 organizations active throughout Maryland. all opposing the Mid-Atlantic Power Pathway that was proposed to run from Virginia through Southern Maryland, across the Eastern Shore, Delaware, then into New Jersey, about 15 years ago. This letter and a number of other actions was all part of what it took to prompt the applicant of the MAP transmission line project to withdraw their application. So we also need to identify steps that local governments can take that would reduce the need for the PSEG transmission line, such as encouraging data centers, the primary users of the PSEG coal-fired electricity, to incorporate features into the projects that reduce the need for electricity. And we also need to find a way to help Maryland and other states to break the clean energy gridlock. This article that appeared recently in the Baltimore Banner included these quotes that you see here, the gist of which is that there's a tremendous amount of clean energy from solar and wind and other sources that could have been brought online now or in the near future if only this organization, PJM, which coordinates the movement of wholesale electricity through all or parts of 13 states, including Maryland, if they would get out of the way of these clean energy projects and eliminate the 5 to 6 year backlog, there is a possibility that there would be enough green energy available in the near future to eliminate the need for a new transmission line and put all those nasty polluting coal-fired power plants out of business. So we have to applaud Maryland Governor Wes Moore and those of Illinois, Ohio, and Pennsylvania that sent this letter to PJM, urging them to provide greater support for the hundreds of gigawatts of clean energy that could have come online. And while we should applaud the governors, including Wes Moore, for doing this, we need to provide them with the political support, the public support that's crucial to allow them to move more aggressively in replacing dirty coal-fired electricity sources with clean energy from solar, wind, and other sources. Otherwise, we face a very uncertain future of more harmful projects like the PSEG transmission line. Thank you for your time. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. And I strongly urge you to visit the Stop Maryland Piedmont Reliability Project webpage at this URL. Thank you for your time.